Far from being a uniquely Australasian infraclass, the marsupials were once widespread across the world, but in most regions were ultimately outcompeted by placental mammals. The two notable exceptions to this are South and Central America, where some marsupial species may still be found today, and, curiously, Australia, where they never evolved at all. Instead, about 55 million years ago, for unknown reasons, terrestrial mammals in Australia went extinct, and about 5 million years later, a South American marsupial crossed a land bridge to Antarctica and then probably rafted to Australia. Considering that the closest living relative of the Australasian marsupials in South America is currently the approximate size, shape, and general disposition of a mouse, the sheer scale of this journey and the fact that this species was apparently the only one to undertake successfully is nothing short of astonishing. Regardless, today there are around 250 marsupial species across Australia, and the first species that we encountered there were these, the black-flanked rock wallabies. One of the smaller species of wallaby, the blackflank, is only around 50 centimetres tall and generally weighs between 5 and 7 kilograms, although some exceptionally large individuals may be up to 9. They are generally shy and nocturnal animals. However, as you can see from this footage here, in areas where they are well protected from threats, both native and introduced, they are known to feed opportunistically during the daylight hours. Our time filming this species was exclusively in and around Alice Springs, and the temperatures in the region can vary quite dramatically throughout the year. So a slightly more flexible dietary habit does make sense. During our visit, the nighttime temperatures were quite low, generally around the 10 to 12 Celsius mark, and so the rock wallabies were often seen basking in the morning, presumably to bring their body temperatures up. They would then spend a few hours browsing before seeking shelter around rocks or under leaves, and emerging again to feed in the late afternoon or early evening. Rock wallabies generally live in groups called mobs of 10 to 100 individuals, and the mob we spent most of our time observing was generally quite relaxed around humans. Although, if given cause to do so, as you can see, they are clearly very agile and capable of quite a significant turn of speed. Our next spot, also in Alice Springs, was the wallaroo, particularly the western wallaroo, sometimes called uru, one of 4 subspecies of common wallaroo. Wallaroos are roughly intermediate in size between the smaller wallabies and the larger kangaroos, although it should be said that subspecies variations can blur these lines significantly. But in general, the uru is between 2 and 4 times the size of the black-flanked rock wallaby, generally standing between 1 and 2 metres tall, of which about half is their tail, and weighing an average of 35 to 40 kilograms, although some of the larger males can be, well, quite a lot larger. While it may seem initially that the name wallaroo is a portmanteau of wallaby and kangaroo, which, considering their intermediate size, wouldn't be particularly unreasonable an assumption, the name instead derives from the Darug word for the species wallaroo, and is therefore one of many Australian Aboriginal nouns to have been introduced and adopted into international English. One of the many morphological differences between wallaroos and wallabies is the strength of their tail. The wallaroo's tail is incredibly heavily muscled and is often used as a third leg for support when walking slowly, although it is also used as a counterbalance, like that of the wallaby, when travelling at speed using their characteristic hopping gait. Unlike the black-flanked rock wallabies, which form large groups, the common wallaroo generally is quite solitary, although small groups will occasionally form around particularly valuable resources. One of the more surprising and most beautiful behaviours we observed was that of a joey leaving its mother's pouch. Like all marsupials, the young of the common wallaroo are extremely altricial or helpless at birth. At approximately 6 months after birth, the joeys will begin to leave their mother's pouch, and by 9 to 10 months, the joeys are generally free roaming, spending only brief periods in their mother's pouch, before being considered fully independent from 14 months at the females and 18 months for the males. Based on the size of this joey, it's probably not long before this will be the case for them as well. This behaviour during development contrasts interestingly with that of the rock wallabies, as the smaller marsupial, when its joeys are capable of surviving outside the pouch, will generally leave its young in a hidden space while it travels off to forage. The larger marsupials, wallaroos included, keep their young with them at all times until they're fully developed. And indeed, the social interactions between them are generally very strong even into later life. Our third and, of course, largest marsupial spot in Australia was the Western Grey kangaroo near Adelaide. Western Greys stand up to 1.3 metres tall, with a metre-long tail, which again is heavily muscled, and weighing in at an average of 45 to 55 kilograms, with some males weighing up to 85. They really are only slightly smaller than the red kangaroos, the largest living marsupial. Like the wallabies and wallaroos that we've already met, their gestation period is just over 30 days and results in a very underdeveloped joey, which then has to crawl through the mother's fur to find a teat in the pouch. And again, between 4 and 6 months later, the now fully formed joey will leave the pouch for the first time and start exploring the world around it. Much like the much smaller rock wallabies, a group of kangaroos is called a mob, although these groups are generally much smaller, typically no more than 15 individuals, and these mobs generally only have a single dominant breeding male, although there will often be several other adult males in the group, generally those related to the breeding females. Despite becoming sexually mature at between 17 and 20 months old, joeys generally still spend a significant amount of time with their mother and within their mob, as they continue to learn the many and varied social and environmental skills to survive in Australia. The social communication between individuals within a group and transient individuals or those from alien groups is particularly complex. Non-aggressive meetings between males and females are among the most common, with larger males generally being engaged in this activity more. But much like the wallaroo, the social bonds between a mother and their joey, even when fully developed, remain strong as well. Interestingly, among kangaroos as a whole, fighting is done by both males and females, although for different reasons. Both males and females will fight amongst themselves for drinking spots or other resource availability, but the characteristic long ritualized fights known as boxing are almost exclusively engaged in by males, and as is so commonly the case, these fights are for reproductive rights. Their locomotion is similar to that of the wallaroo, alternating between pentapedal, using their tail as a third leg for slow movement, and a high-speed hopping gait, which, for the much larger kangaroos, can enable them to attain a cruising speed of 15 to 25 kilometers an hour and a maximum sprint speed of up to 70 kilometers an hour at around 60 to 80 centimeters long and 4 to 15 kilograms. Koalas are among the largest of the arboreal marsupials and are the closest living relative of the wombat, having diverged from the macropod lineage, which contains kangaroos and wallabies, among others, around 40 million years ago. As a consequence of this, the koala's body plan differs significantly from that of a kangaroo, for example. Beyond the obvious, roughly spherical body shape, which upon reflection isn't that different from that of the black-flanked rock wallaby, koalas have a notably broad, dark nose, no tail, and comparatively small eyes with, unusually among marsupials, vertical slits, an adaptation to living in a more vertical lifestyle due to their arboreal nature. Much like the sloth of South America, the diet of the koala has heavily influenced its morphology and biology due to the toxic nature of the leaves it consumes and their relatively poor nutritional value. A koala's metabolic rate is only around 50% of that of an equivalently sized mammal, and proportionally, its brain is even smaller, only around 2/5 the size of an equivalently sized wallaby or wallaroo, for example. As a result, the koala has a limited ability to perform complex or novel behaviours. As an example, a koala will not eat plucked leaves on a flat surface, which conflicts with its normal feeding routine, which is why, in captivity, koalas must be fed intact tree branches from species they know. Koalas are generally considered asocial and spend just 15 minutes a day on social behaviours, which makes it particularly astonishing, and us particularly lucky, to have been able to observe this individual grunting and roaring, having presumably been shown the door by a female, who we observed in a nearby tree but was in no mood to encourage visitors. So we elected not to disturb her further. As a consequence of this, though, we were also extremely lucky to have seen this individual moving across the ground, which is extremely rare, as a koala will normally only leave its tree at night when the risk of predation is comparatively low.